We're going to talk about the international implications of all of this with France 24's Andrew Hilliar, who joins me on the set. And Andy, just about 5 kilometers away from that New York federal courthouse, the UN Security Council was actually debating the legality of Nicolas Maduro's capture.
Yeah, that's right. As you just said, 5 kilometers away from the federal courthouse where Nicolas Maduro was making his appearance. The remarkable scene of global powers debating the legality of his capture at the UN during a UN Security Council meeting. Of course, unsurprisingly, the US ambassador to the UN, Mike Waltz, defending the US position, saying that this was a law enforcement action. It wasn't military action. Of course, Venezuela, for its part, the ambassador of Venezuela saying that the country's sovereignty had been violated. China and Russia, key allies of Venezuela, sitting on the Security Council, leading the denouncement of that action of the U.S. capture of Maduro. The Russian ambassador, not without irony, it has to be said, slamming Washington for using brute force. China calling the intervention illegal interference. Now, contrast that to the tone used by the U.S.'s European allies, a far more prudent reaction, and very mindful of the words they're choosing, of course, when it comes to describing Donald Trump and Washington's actions, eager not to anger the US administration at this point in time. That's in no small part because of the fact that of today's meeting in Paris between European officials and US officials for the coalition of the willing, Europeans relying on US support. Of course, France highlighting the fact that the operation ran counter to the principle of the non-use of force. But remember, this is after Emmanuel Macron was accused, French president accused, of dragging his feet in his response, waiting until Monday to really criticize the method used against Nicolas Maduro. As for the UK, again, it's underscoring the importance of upholding international law, but reserving much of their intervention to describing, to highlighting Nicolas Maduro's repressive regime.
And Donald Trump's move has certainly put both allies and foes in tricky positions.
It has indeed, and I think there's no better illustration of the shifting geopolitical chessboard that we're seeing happening right now. This move really leaving Washington's European allies in an enormous bind, trying to straddle some kind of middle ground. They found themselves, Jeannie, having to, at the same time, stress how bad Nicolas Maduro's regime is, whilst also stressing the need for international law to be upheld, and, as we've just seen, issuing statements defending Denmark and Greenland in the face of Donald Trump and his administration, openly talking of annexing the territory. In the last hour, as Clovis Casali just pointed out, a host of European countries, amongst them France, the UK and Germany, issuing a joint statement backing Denmark and Greenland to decide the future of that territory. At the same time, European allies of Trump clearly can't go too far with their criticism of Trump because they still rely on Washington for support when it comes to Ukraine, as we're seeing now with that meeting of the coalition of the willing in Paris. And now if we just switch gears and take a look at Venezuela's traditional allies, well, they're in a bind too, Jeannie. China has a lot to lose here. The bulk of Venezuela's oil went to China. Beijing has made huge economic inroads in the last few years. But as we saw when the US and Israel bombed Iran last year, another ally of China, there's a limit to China's support. It doesn't quite have the geopolitical or military clout to really push back against the US. So it can offer mainly diplomatic support at the halls of the UN, for example, which does count for something when it comes to global public opinion. And then Russia is having to weigh up the cost of it losing a key ally in the region against maintaining good relations with Trump that it can then use against Ukraine to secure a favorable ceasefire on its terms there. And all these shifting dynamics we're seeing, Jeannie, really underscore the deeper geopolitical fragmentation that really is shaping the international system.